Hello, everyone. Welcome to Abnormal Investigations. It's good to see everybody tonight. We have a special guest joining us tonight. Lon Strickler is going to be joining us. I've been very excited to talk to him and to find out, some of his encounters and some of the things he's went through. And he also helps people when they have their encounters also. So he has a whole lot of information, and I'm excited to hear what all he's encountered and what he's investigated. And these things are for sure scary. I'm going to go ahead and throw on the co-host real quick. That way we can get this show on the road, and we'll have Lon in just a second.
Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing today?
Doing great. How are you?
Good. Hello, Chris. How are you?
Good evening. Good evening. What's going on, Stephen? Miss Jess? How is everybody? How's everybody doing?
Good. Good.
Doing good. We're excited.
Good. Yeah, no, I'm excited too. I mean, we got Lon coming on. It's going to be very good. I have some questions for him in regard to the Mothman because he's been very explorative in it. And of course, him coming on, talking what he's going to be talking about this evening. I'm excited. But hey, I want to thank you guys first and foremost having me come on. Of course, I got the times right this time.
We're just glad you're over. We're just glad you're over the flu too, man. That thing I hear is hitting a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm still feeling it, but I feel much better today compared to how I've been feeling, the past couple of days. It was awful. It started over the weekend, and I was like, great, right before Memorial Day, the biggest of my job. So long story short, it's great. After electrolytes and lots of rest, now I'm finally back on track.
Good.
All right. Without further ado, let's bring Lon in. Let's go ahead and get him in, and let's dive into this.
Hello, Lon. Welcome. Oh, you got your mute on.
Okay.
There we go. How are you?
I'm fine.
Good.
It's good to have you, Lon. We're excited to have you. Thank you for coming on and making the time to come on.
No problem.
Yeah.
I've been watching a lot of your stuff, and you've had some pretty scary stuff come your way that you've investigated, and reports and everything that you've took.
Well, I've been doing this a long time. Coming up on 50 years, actually.
Yeah.
And, I was doing this back when nobody knew anything about the paranormal and paranormal investigators and all that. I actually started doing investigations in the mid-70s when I was in senior in high school. So, yeah, I've been around a long time doing this stuff. And, but, if you don't love it, you don't do it. And it's something I enjoy doing. I mean, it's just not like I concentrate on one thing. I kind of take everything that comes my way for the most part, and I go from there. And it's been interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of those stories that I've been listening to on your show, I mean, they're just phenomenal information and wealth of information that you have coming in. I'm amazed.
Well, it keeps me busy.
I bet.
I didn't have a choice kind of growing up. Whenever I grew up, the stuff was at my granny's house, and my mom and them, they had to go through it. So it was just like, it seemed like it was always there. And I think they kind of brought it on themselves in a way, because it wasn't always there. When my uncle came back from Vietnam, he decided to take his wife at the time, down to the river bottoms, and they would go spook hunting. And one night they had an encounter, and it's like after they had that encounter, it showed up and they couldn't get rid of it.
That seems like you brought it home with him.
Yeah, definitely. He brought two of them.
Yeah, I started. Well, I was born and raised where I'm living at now. I was born and raised here in South Central Pennsylvania, in Hanover, and I'm only a few miles from Gettysburg. So I spent a lot of time on the battlefield as a kid. I was kind of a little history nerd, and I had my first real encounter when I was 9 years old at the battlefield, because I used to during the summer, I used to get on my bike when, nobody cared. The kid was riding his bike 10, 15 miles to go somewhere. Not like it is nowadays. And I used to spend a lot of time there. And, I always knew there was something a little bit different about me, though I didn't really understand it at the time. I didn't live in a haunted house. Nobody ever talked anything about, the paranormal. I don't think anybody in my family had a paranormal bone in their body, quite honest with you. And what happened this one day, I was 9 years old, it was 1967. And I was in the area around what they call the Valley of Death, which is, if you're familiar with Gettysburg, it's between Little Round Top, Devil's Den, and the wheat field. And I was on that access road riding towards Devil's Den, and it was a July afternoon, and it's like a TV screen opened up in front of me. I mean, I was literally in the battle, and I was seeing soldiers, hearing gunfire, smelling gun smoke, the whole 9 yards, and it lasted for about maybe 30 seconds and just vanished. It wasn't, I didn't know what was going on, but it wasn't residual. I mean, it was more to it than that. And that was kind of baptism by fire, So when that happened, I was afraid to really say much to my parents. Very, very conservative family, and I didn't really say much of anything. And I was noticing as I got older, I was seeing things, experiencing things, to the point where I was literally doing investigations in high school. It was an all word of mouth thing back then, and people would have an issue with something, and they'd invariably get a hold of me through the grapevine, and so that's what I would do. Then after high school, I moved to Baltimore. I lived down there for about 40 years, raised a family. Then about in 2016, I moved back up here. So I do spend a lot of time. I do a lot of investigations locally as well, but I'm at Gettysburg a lot, and it's almost like a second home to me. So, but in the meantime, I've encountered a lot of things over the years, and I never really lost interest in it, and eventually I started writing the blog in 2005 after doing a lot of investigations for years, and it's kind of where we are right now.
It's interesting you talk about the Civil War thing that happened to you. I was working at a mall, and I was a captain at the mall. We had hired a kid one night, and he totally just took off running, and he set off every alarm. So we was on our way home. We had to go back, and he came in and he said, "I'm not working here no more." He swore up and down that whenever he looked into JCPenney's, that he saw the whole thing of the soldiers, the fire. And I mean, this kid was scared to death. He wouldn't even come back to bring his stuff back. We had to go get it from him. I mean, he was really.
Where were you located at?
It was at Washington Park Mall in Bartlesville, Oklahoma.
Oh, okay.
And
the battlefields in particular just hold a lot of energy, and we're lucky here because of Gettysburg and the very high bedrock and the granite and the quartz and all the water and everything. It just holds a lot of energy, and I'm amazed at how much does show up there. And it's just not on the battlefield; it's all through the town and everywhere around. It's it kind of rubs off on the whole region. And we've also had a lot of cryptid activity around here as well. So yeah, I was kind of I kind of got into that. I was really doing mostly paranormal investigations as far as hauntings and attachments and stuff for a long, long time, until I had a Bigfoot encounter in 1981 in Maryland. And then I later had a winged humanoid encounter in '88, not far from where I live now. So yeah, I kind of focus mostly on cryptid activity, but I've been doing it all since then. So it kind of, I just keep, it keeps me busy. I'm not working or anything. So that's what I do. I mean, this is a 24/7 thing with me.
Right. You talked about that the winged thing, and everybody I've spoke to said if you want to know about the Mothman, Lon knows. And I was wondering what do you think it is? What is your thoughts on, like, what is the creature? Do you think it's a moth, or do you think it's some kind of something else?
Well, I had done some investigations down at Point Pleasant early on, and I mean, after I had my encounter, and I started getting more and more involved with the winged humanoid phenomena, and of course, when I had my encounter here in central Pennsylvania, then I started collecting other accounts in the area, and it seemed much more supernatural than being natural. It's not a natural phenomenon as far as I'm concerned. I believe these beings are either interdimensional or portal travelers, or to some extent, but it's definitely supernatural. And when we started getting involved with the Chicago Mothman investigation and such, uh, I became more and more convinced after all the sightings that we documented since 2011, that it's definitely a supernatural being. So that's what I think it is. I think all in all, especially the being that was seen at Point Pleasant was a sentinel or a guardian of a very strong indigenous spirit, probably Shawnee. I don't know, but it seemed to, and it does still seem to hang around the West Virginia Ordnance Works, or the TNT plant, what people call it. And that entity, that spirit. And I think because people were showing up at that time in 66 and 67, that it literally summoned the Mothman as a protector. And I think that's what it is. And I think for the most part, that's what these beings are.
Wow. So you actually did, you encountered it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I encountered it. I didn't encounter it down there, but I encountered it here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I had a actual encounter with one of them. At the time, I thought it may have been a Mothman, but I wasn't really sure what it was. It was very similar. What it was very similar to were the descriptions of the winged humanoids that we were getting reports of in Chicago. So was I predestined for all this? I don't know. It does seem that way to a point, but we've been working extensively on this phenomenon now for 14 years. So we picked up a lot of information. We still don't really know what it is or what the whole thing is about, but we have had some minimal contact with it. I had investigators on my team who have communicated to a degree with it. It's been 3 years since our last communication with one of these beings, but as far as what people are seeing in Chicago and the Chicagoland area, there's multitudes of these beings that keep coming in and out. And the sightings for the most part are very fleeting sightings, very quick, very fast. Before people even get a chance to even think about what they encountered, grabbing a phone and take a photograph of it. But they do seem to want to be seen for whatever reason. Now, why they're showing up, we just don't know. I don't think they're harbingers, just like with John Keel, with Mothman prophecies. I don't think it was a harbinger of the Silver Bridge collapse. I just think that was happenstance if somebody really did see it beforehand. But there was a lot going on in that year before the bridge collapse in the area around Point Pleasant. So I just think it's one of many phenomena that was occurring at that time.
I know, just from what I've seen on TV and stuff, everybody talking about it flying and how scary it looked. And, I was like, man, I would hate for something like that to, to have an encounter with something like that. When my granny, of course, she was a lot older, and we would have things happen down there, and we would have like footprints in the snow that would go out in the middle of the field, and they would just stop.
Mm-hmm.
And we would always say, well, Granny, where'd it go? And she'd always tell us, well, some of them things fly. And she was always just real adamant about it. Like, that's what they do. They fly.
Yeah, most instances when people see footprints, and there's a variety of type of beings that are footprint sizes or such that people see, a lot of time they just end. And I think the reason for that is because they go through a portal. I think they have the ability to do that. I think most cryptids have the ability to do that. I think some Bigfoot can do it. I think the cryptid canines can do it, as well as the winged humanoids. I think most cryptids that people see and that people report are not natural beings, though in some instances they may very well be in some areas like Bigfoot in Pacific Northwest, down around in Florida, around the Gulf and that area. I think there may be some indigenous beings with some family groups, but for the most part, when people see a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch, it's a singletary being. And a lot of times they just seem to show up and they seem to quickly disappear somehow. And I think that has a lot to do with it. I think they have the ability to move themselves off our earth plane onto another. And, as far as I'm concerned, I believe they're supernatural beings.
Now, are all of the Mothman reports that come into you or that you have gotten, or the winged humanoid creature reports, they're not all the same descriptions and stuff too? I know I was watching one of your episodes talking about like these flying gargoyle type creatures and such. Are those in the same, would you consider those in the same category, or are those like a whole different phenomenon, or what do you think on those?
Well, the what people have been seeing and what I saw, compared to what was seen at Point Pleasant, the only real similarity is the red eyes. Now, not all of them have the red eyes, but the investigations in Chicago, and we have about 180 sightings now that we deemed to be legitimate sightings. Most of them do have the red eyes, but there's some that don't. We've had blue eye, green eye beings as well. The Point Pleasant Mothman, or what was deemed the Mothman, had a insectoid wing-like structure. The body itself was kind of more stout. The eyes were kind of inset with the body, like that would be with a moth, or a butterfly. But what we've been encountering, and what I encountered in my encounter, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. They do have the red eyes, but the body itself is mostly emaciated, but it's humanoid. The wing structure, it varies. We've had insectoid wings, we've had owl wings or owlman, or we've had gargoyle or bat-like wings as well. It kind of runs the gamut. Sometimes the arms are attached to the wings. Sometimes they're just set, solitary wings with no arms. But for the most part, the body structure is pretty similar with the 6 to 7.5 foot height and very emaciated dark body. So that's kind of what we've been concentrating on. And if you did see the Unsolved Mysteries episode that we did this past year, you can see how some of the witnesses described it. So, and that's very similar to what I encountered.
Talking about the gargoyle thing, that really, I wasn't even out looking for anything one night, and I had my little girl in the back seat. We were just driving, and I turned the corner down by it's just an old dirt road in the middle of nowhere, and she started screaming. I mean, having a fit, and I thought she was hurt. I thought something stung her or something, and she was just screaming, "Go, go, go, go!" And when we finally got up to the church in town, I pulled over because there was some light there, And I got out, and that's exactly what she said. She said, "Dad, I saw a gargoyle wrapped around the telephone pole, and it waved at me." And she was terrified. I mean, like, I've never seen her like that.
Yeah, I mean, kids see a lot of different things. I mean, they're kind of unaffected early on about what they are and aren't supposed to be seeing or perceiving, and they see a lot of things that us adults just don't pick up anymore. So I mean, I got a lot of reports from kids. I mean, through their parents, and their parents are upset and they don't know what's going on, and I'll talk to the kid, and they'll describe very similar type of beings. Now, let me tell you, I'm going to tell you what I encountered in '88, and you can kind of make a comparison as to what you believe it was. But this was October 1988. I was living in Baltimore at the time, and I went to I was out antiquing out at the Old Timonium Fairgrounds in north of Baltimore, and they have several buildings there, and they had a Boy Scout exhibit or jamboree or something going on, but they had troops from all around Pennsylvania and Maryland there. So I just happened to walk through there, and I walked into a friend of mine who was a scout leader, a guy I went to school with in Pennsylvania, who was actually a scout leader of a troop. And, we hadn't seen each other in about a dozen years or so, but he knew about me in paranormal because he used to actually spend time with me on the big Gettysburg battlefield as a kid. We used to camp when you could camp out there. We used to camp out there sometimes. So, he saw a lot of stuff with me back then. So we were sitting there having lunch and talking, and he asked me, he said, "Do you still do the paranormal stuff?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Now, I don't know if this is paranormal or not." He said, "Me and another leader, another troop leader, are going to go up the old Camp Conawago." Oh, I just happened. Okay.
Oops.
My computer went weird for a second.
He said, "We're going to go up to the old Camp Conawago, but because some weird stuff's been going up there the past summer." He said, "What's been going on is that some of the troops who were camping out in the wooded area, the camping area, were leaving early and were complaining about hearing horrendous screams coming from the woods." And it happened 5 or 6 times the summer of 1988. So it was October, and there wasn't anything going on that weekend. So he decided they were going to go up there. So he asked me, "Do you want to tag along?" I said, "Sure." I said, "I'll go along. I haven't been up there in a while." So, yeah. So we met up there the next Friday night. And we met and we hiked into the woods and set up our camp, and, typical fall day. And we had 3 tents. We set everything up, got a fire going. And by that time, it was probably about 6 o'clock. It was just starting to turn dusk. And we're sitting around the campfire, and we decided we were going to, go out the next day and kind of hike through the area. And but that night was pretty uneventful, though. The next morning when we woke up, the other guy mentioned that he said, "Did you hear anything walking through the campsite last night?" And I did. I thought it was one of those guys getting up and relieve themselves out in the woods or something. I didn't know what it was. So, but nothing in the campsite was disturbed at all that we could tell. So we didn't think much about it. So we spent that whole day, that whole Saturday, walking around the old. There's a state game land around there, and we're not really far from Gettysburg. And we hiked towards Gettysburg and around there. I don't know. We were out all day, and we got back I'd say about 6 or so. It was early evening, and we started cooking dinner at the campsite. And we were sitting around, talking. I think we were talking football more than anything else. And we were kind of mentioning what had been going on up there, what the kids had been hearing, what the scout leaders had been hearing. And I didn't know what it was. The area had a lot of wildlife, and I thought, well, maybe it's, animals make a lot of crazy noises sometimes. I mean, you just don't really know what it was. So it was getting close to about 10 o'clock, I think, and we were sitting at the campfire, and we heard this scream. It was coming from the west of us in the woods. And but it didn't really seem like anything, supernatural or paranormal to me. I mean, it could have been an animal. I didn't know what it was. So, I didn't think much about it. Well, anyway, so we continued to sit there. And about an hour or so later, then we heard this horrendous scream. And it sounded like it was what it was flying around or going quickly through the woods, because you could kind of hear it coming in and out. But it literally sounded like a woman screaming. I mean, screaming bloody murder. And, so that perked our ears up. So we decided we were going to stay up the rest of the night, whatever, see what anything showed up. So we were still sitting around the campfire. About an hour and a half later, I got up, had to stretch my legs, and I walked out onto the trail. On the other side of the trail was the creek, Conewaga Creek. So I got out on the trail, and me being, I'm intuitive, so I pick up on a lot of different stuff. I just didn't feel right. So you get that feeling like something's watching you. So I walked back to the campfire, and I told those guys, look, I guess it was about 1 o'clock in the morning by that time. I said, why don't we get our flashlights, go out on the trail, go up and down the trail, see if anything shows up. Okay, we're not doing anything else. So that's what we did. So we grabbed our flashlights, got up, and just walked back to back to back on, on the trail heading west. And we didn't get 50 foot away from the campsite, and we saw it. And standing in the creek, and look, the moon wasn't full, but it was very bright that night. Standing in the middle of the creek, which was low that time of year, was something with these big red eyes. Standing right there. And by the time we got our flashlights on this thing, it literally jettisoned itself into the air and let out this horrendous scream. And when it reached its apex, it took off, and you heard it screaming the whole way away as it took off and left us. Well, we freaked out, And we got back to the campsite, sat there, and we're watching around, seeing if this thing comes back. And my buddy, he's not talking. He's shocked. He didn't know what the hell he just saw. And I didn't say much of anything. Now, the other guy, he said, did you notice anything on its back? And I did. It looked like it had possibly wings on its back, but it was high, kind of stretched up over its head. But it never unfurled its wings when it took off, because when this thing took off, we literally heard a whooshing sound. It like this thing was jettisoned out of a cannon, And, so I said, yeah, it might have had wings, but the red eyes are definitely what I noticed. I mean, they weren't reflecting red. They were projecting red, like tail lights. That's kind of what it reminded me of, taillights. So we sat there a second. My buddy, he started talking and said, well, I'm not sticking around here now. I'm going up the administration building to sleep up there. Well, okay. So all in all, they went up there and spent the night. I stayed at the campsite, but nothing else happened that night. So anyway, I didn't really mention a whole lot about that for almost 20 years. I told a couple people about it, but I didn't really think much about it. I had been doing some investigations into the Mothman phenomena a couple of times, and but I kept a lot of that quiet. But when I started writing my blog, I started in 2005. I eventually I mentioned it in an article. I wrote an article about it, what we had encountered, and about 2 weeks later, I got an email from a guy who lived not far from the campsite. And he said, I've been living here all these years, and I've heard that a screaming sound coming from up around the creek and up the campsite for about 20 years now. I don't know. Do you think it was what we saw? I mean, what you guys saw? I said, well, I don't know. Could have been. But after a while, then we started getting reports, and I had another scout leader who contacted me about a week after this first guy contacted me, and he said, this past year, maybe a couple of weeks before that, he and his troop had been up to Camp Conawaga, and he said it was a Saturday, and we were, we need to, kids in the troop, they just kind of run around, do what they want to do on a Saturday. We were just camping out, and we didn't have anything real scheduled to do. But he said in that afternoon, they all came running back, yelling and screaming and crying as they saw a dragon on the trail. And I said, well, did they describe it to you? He said, all they said was it looked like a dragon. They didn't, but it scared the hell out of them. They didn't leave. They stayed there till that next Sunday. But he said, I thought they were pulling my leg. I didn't really give it much credence. But after I read your account, I thought, well, maybe that's what they saw. Well, it could have been. But years later, as I up until about maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I have received upwards to 6 sightings along Conawaga Creek, anywhere from where the camp is, anywhere east up into the Susquehanna, where it empties into the Susquehanna River. And we've had several accounts along the river, the creek bed, of people seeing something very similar to what I saw. So there is something going on there. We've had other sightings and encounters around this area as well. So I got really interested in that phenomena. But then again, in 2011, when we got the first sighting report out of Chicago with there were 3 sightings in South Chicago. We started looking into it much more. And, from 2011 to 2017, it kind of waned off. But then in the spring of 2017, that's when all hell broke loose, and we were getting reports left and right all around the Chicagoland area. So, like I said before, right now we're at about 180 sightings that we deem to be legitimate sightings, or just unexplained sightings. And the sightings run anywhere from Wisconsin, just south of Milwaukee, down into central Illinois, into central Indiana. And we've been taking sighting reports within a 250-mile radius of Chicago, or the Chicago city, or downtown. So, and there's specific new neighborhoods in the city that have had more activity throughout, but it's been fairly consistent. I think last year we got maybe 8 or 9 sightings altogether. But, it kind of comes in cycles. You get a lot, then you get a very few, and back and forth. But, it's been kind of a whirlwind, very interesting. So eventually we ended up doing the Unsolved Mysteries thing, and people started realizing that what they saw may very well be real. And then we started getting some reports after the show. And in fact, Unsolved Mysteries, the producer, they were taking reports from the public who watched it. And we got 130 reports from them. But
wow.
About 30 of those reports were in the Chicago area. And we did have contacts. We contacted a few and talked to a few, and maybe about 8 or 9 who got back to us. But the whole winged humanoid phenomenon is a worldwide phenomenon, because we got a lot of foreign reports as well.
Yeah, I was actually kind of surprised, because I'm in southeast Wisconsin, and listening to some of the reports that came in with the Chicago area and like south of Milwaukee. There were a couple that actually mentioned my city too, and I was like, wow, I know exactly where that is. That's kind of freaky.
We've had a lot of sightings along the lakeside from Milwaukee down, and quite a few actually. And Racine seems to be Kenosha and Racine seem to be the most active, but we've had sightings as far west as Mineral Point in that area there. So yeah, we are getting a lot of sightings, and we have had a lot of sightings, and it just, like I said, it keeps us very busy.
Yeah.
Have they ever tried to hurt anybody, abduct anybody, or anything like that?
Not that I know of. They scare the living hell out of some people. they kind of bluff charge sometimes, which, you know, a lot of cryptids do that. But many times the sightings in the city itself, these things will be flying around, and somebody will see it, and they'll start flying, and then they'll drop in front of them or drop very near them and just scare them and such. And people freak out. But as far as actually physical contact or being threatening, it hasn't been a whole lot of that at all, really. I mean, I think people are just so shocked by what it is, and they just assume this thing's going to hurt them. Now, I'm not saying people embellish on their reports, but there really hasn't been anything that has been threatening as far as I'm concerned.
Wow. Did you, Chris, did you have a question for him? You said you had some Mothman questions you was wondering about.
Oh, yes. Hey, Lon, how you doing tonight, bud? How's everything?
All right.
So, you know, I've been following your blog for quite a while, and one of the things I remember looking at was in 2021, I think it could have been November, you had mentioned in the unseen ones and the winged ones, you mentioned the word ultra-terrestrial. Could you give me a little bit of insight on what your perception, what that is exactly, and what you would think, like ultra-terrestrial and like the unseen ones?
Well, basically, this was around the time that we were having some contact with these beings. Now, it was mostly psychic contact. We did have one individual who swore he was touched at the cemetery at O'Hare. He had gotten out there. He was actually worked for a cargo company, and he had the ability to get into that area where the cargo and some of the areas were in the southwest part of the airport. But as many people know, there is a cemetery at O'Hare, and we have had some activity around that area, and in fact, I think that area in particular may have a portal or two there, because people are seeing a lot of stuff there. But anyway, ultra-terrestrial, it's kind of hard to define an ultra-terrestrial, other than it's a being that's, in my estimation, a being that's able to move within worlds, or move within, not necessarily realities, but within dimensions. And people have all types of definitions for a lot of these things. I mean, ultra-terrestrial, I've heard a lot of people define it in their own way. As far as I'm concerned, for what we encountered with the unseen ones, what they called themselves as the unseen ones, suggested that they weren't extraterrestrial. They're just cryptid. We don't know exactly what they are, but they're supernatural. And I thought the safest definition was ultra-terrestrial. And we could have said interdimensional, but we just didn't really know that. Now, the information the very sparse information we got from them was that they resided on another dimension that was very different to our Earth plane. And I also gathered that they weren't the only creatures on that dimension. Now, what that meant, they didn't really go into detail. Unfortunately, we lost contact with these beings because somebody who was trying to make contact with them outside of our group did so, and they just cut everything off. And they would no longer contact us, or no longer, make contact. We tried a lot of different things. We even remote viewed several times, and that just didn't help at all. But yeah, the unseen ones are these winged humanoids. You know, they could have been something entirely different than the winged humanoids because they never really told us what they were. But they did reach out to us for whatever reason. And we had some very brief contact with them. But, you know, that incident with this other person just kind of blew up and they just cut everything off. We didn't hear a thing from them. So we kind of just stopped it. And I don't really talk a whole lot about it. I probably won't talk much more about it unless we get more contact. But until that time, I'm not going to really espouse on it because I just don't want to, because I just didn't get enough information from them to really make a determination of what they really were. They could have been some type of other being that was posing as them. I don't know. I don't think so, but I think this, it was related to what people have been seeing, and hopefully at some point, we'll be able to do it again. But I don't know if that'll happen.
My last question is in relation to O'Hare. Specifically, what is it about that location that is drawn to? Has anything to do with the beacon features, electronic, magnetic? I know we kind of spoke a little bit about that in the previous question, but just out of curiosity.
I don't know. I wish I did know. There's been a lot of activity around O'Hare. Even in the neighborhoods around O'Hare, Bensonville, east of O'Hare, over in some of the green areas there, and but in O'Hare itself, there's the area itself, the southwest area, the cargo areas, in that part, and where they have been doing a lot of building there as well. They seem to show up. We've literally had security people and air traffic controllers and pilots and all have sightings of these things. A lot of employees, especially those that work in cargo, have reported as well. A lot of them have been threatened to with their jobs to keep it quiet for whatever reason. The powers that be at O'Hare are not happy about what we've been doing. And, when we've had the pilot reports and the air traffic controller reports, we've made inquiries with the Great Lakes Regional Division of the FCC and the what do you call that? Well, I don't know. Even some of the unions as well. For whatever reason, people are spooked by it. They just don't want to talk about it. But we've been lucky enough to have a few people come forward and actually talk about it with us, people who work there and such. And I found a lot of it pretty compelling. I've had the opportunity to talk to several of them, and I do believe them. I think something is really going on there, and unfortunately, it just has not developed to the point where we really know what's going on. Though, who's to say it won't pick up again? I'm hoping that it will, but we just don't know.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for answering those questions. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Travis Carpenter was wondering, do you think that the movies Jeepers Creepers could be something maybe fashioned after that or something?
Well, I'll tell you, a lot of people who have had encounters with these beings have used that Jeepers Creepers moniker as far as what they reminded them of. But of course, a lot of times when people see things that they don't understand, they use something that they do know of, just like in pulp culture, movies and such. And that Jeepers Creepers moniker has popped up many times. I think mostly because of the wing structure being like the gargoyle type wing and such. But I've had other sightings throughout the world of winged humanoids, and I've had that same description said to me. Gargoyle and Jeepers Creepers are probably the two most used monikers to describe these beings.
Makes you wonder where they got the idea from in the first place.
Well, you wonder. You know, it very well could have been something, an encounter somebody had had, and the playwright got a hold of it, or a screenwriter got a hold of it. We do have another phenomena that has been going on now for almost a decade, what we call the Glimmerman. And in fact, we're working on a book about it now that very closely resembles the Predator films and the Alien and the Predator films, and how it cloaks and such. People have been seeing that Glimmerman or that glass scene type phenomena, and we've had hundreds of reports over the years. We just don't know what it is. Is it some type of other cryptid or being that's using some type of technology to cloak itself? I don't know. Is it something that was, actually somebody had seen one point and told a screenwriter and they wrote it up in the movie? That very well could have happened. I do have some indications from some of the research we have done into the Predator films that may very well be the basis for the Predator alien. But I can't talk about that yet. I just don't have enough evidence, and it'll be in the book.
Mike actually saw something similar to that out in the woods, about a month ago? Month and a half, 2 months ago?
There's
we're getting more and more sightings.
So many things. I used to, growing up, I had never seen anything in the sky, that looked weird or scared me or anything until last summer. And last summer, I noticed that which would be the northwest sky here, I went outside and was looking around, and I noticed there was these like 3 lights, and they were getting brighter and dimmer, brighter and dimmer. And I kind of paid attention to them, but that's really not what caught my attention. What caught my attention was they started kind of like chasing each other. They were moving in ways I had never seen anything move. One would chase one, the other one would chase it, then it would fade out, and then it would like fade back in. It was really weird. I'd never seen anything like that.
Yeah, you're in Oklahoma. It's interesting. We had an investigation going on out in what county was that? It was in the southern part of the state near the Texas line. But anyway, there's a gentleman who had encounters with these beings that did the same thing. And in fact, I have a picture of one in a tree in that cloaking type of or Glimmerman form. So it's nothing. I mean, this is something that's just been going on all over, and we've been collecting these reports. When it first started out, it was like, I don't know what it is. Maybe people are trying to pull our leg because of the Predator thing, because it was really matching a lot of what people had seen in the film. But it has continued on and on. We're just getting more and more reports as time has gone on. So, we've had people who claim that they think it's a Bigfoot that's somehow cloaking, or another type of cryptid that's cloaking. I don't know if that's true or not. But many times they're seen in trees. Many times, if it's happening near a residence, it'll happen very near a balcony or a window or something where people will see it. So, I mean, it's just another one of the most unexplained things that we know about. And I mean, the cryptid world is just never going to go moot. I mean, there's always something that's raising its ugly head, and people are going to report, and we're going to look into it.
And you had a Bigfoot encounter too, correct?
Yeah, back in '81.
Did it look like everybody always says to you? Was it the same?
Well, the being I saw looked more human than than ape. I always said it looked like a Neanderthal with a lot of hair. But what happened was I was fairly young. I was like 21 or 22 at the time. And I was living in Sykesville, Maryland. And I used to go fishing on the south branch of the Tapsco River. I was about a mile downstream from Sykesville. Area I've been at a lot. I did a lot of fly fishing on there. And I was out into the river, very narrow river there. It's a branch. So, yeah, I was standing in the river casting. And I did notice across on the other bank, on the northern bank, a dog. There was a dog kind of moving in and out of the weeds and such. Didn't pay it much mind until the dog yelped. And when the dog yelped, I looked over there and I saw this big whatever standing up in the weeds. Now, the weeds were pretty high at that time, but this thing stood up and the weeds came up to its chest. But I couldn't really tell what it was, but it started moving. It started moving towards my left, towards the bank of the river. And when it stepped out of the weeds, it stood on the bank, and it was about 40 foot from me. We were very close. And this thing stood anywhere from 7.5 to 8 foot tall. It looked like a Neanderthal. I mean, it had the thick brow ridge, it had the conish head, had a lot of very dark brown hair. A lot of it was matted around the legs and such. The skin on its face was very dark, almost black. Honestly, if I'd had a gun, I wouldn't be able to shoot it because it looked more human to me than it did ape. But we locked eyes on each other. I'm standing in the river, I'm in waders, and I'm thinking, well, if this thing comes running at me, I'm screwed, But I really didn't know what I was looking at. And, I knew about Bigfoot and but I wasn't into the cryptids back then, and I just didn't really think much about it. Sure, the Boggy Creek thing was going on about that time, and people had been talking about that. It wasn't too, people had talked about the Patterson Gimlin film and such, but I didn't really know what I was looking at. Well, we looked at each other, we locked eyes, and this thing was standing there making a clicking sound. I didn't know what it was, why it was doing that. I think it was gnashing its teeth. But I think it was perturbed because I was standing there looking at it or for whatever reason. But we probably stood there about 10 seconds. And it just turned on a dime and walked very swiftly back up into the woods. Well, I didn't know what to think. I immediately got out of the river and got up on the road and drove back to Sykesville. I still had my waders and everything on. I didn't even take them off. And I got to a phone by a bar, called the police, and I told them what I saw. And the woman on the other end of the phone with Sykesville police said, well, I'll tell you what, we'll have an officer come back and meet you there. Just drive back and he'll meet you. I'm thinking, well, do I really want to drive back there? Right. But I said, okay. So it was no more than a 3-minute drive. I was only like a mile out of town. So I drove back up River Road and I got to the area where I'd been. And by that time, a Maryland State police officer had already gotten there, and he had those old wooden barriers like the seesaw. I mean, across the road. It was a very narrow road. You barely had two lanes on it. So I pulled up and he told me to roll the window down. He said, you got to get out of here. I said, hey, I just called Sykesville police. They told me to show up here because I had a sighting of something. I don't know what it was. I think I did say, I think it may have been a Bigfoot. But he said, I don't care. You got to leave. Okay. So I turned around. I got around somehow and I drove back home. I lived in Sykesville. And I probably spent another hour at home, and I decided, well, shoot, I'm going back up there. So I did. I got in the car and I drove back. And by that time, there were cars everywhere. I literally had to park about a quarter of a mile and walk back up there because there were cars everywhere. I mean, every police department, jurisdiction, even the feds, because the feds used to drive those old black Wagoneers back then. And there were two of them sitting there, and they had people going through the woods around the creek, around the river with dogs. Must have been a half dozen of them. They had a big white tent set up across the river in the area where this thing originally was. So I didn't know what was going on. So I kind of walked up to the barrier, and there was a Howard County cop standing there, a few other people, and I said hi to him. I said, I'm trying to drive through here. I said, I don't really want to go around and take a detour. I said, what's going on? He kind of laughed, and he said, well, somebody said they saw a Bigfoot. Really? Yeah. Well, I wasn't going to tell him I was the one who made the report. And I stood there for a little bit, and I heard helicopters. I mean, I heard a helicopter. I didn't see one, but I heard one. And I'm watching these people, and I'm thinking, well, I'm getting out of here before people start asking me questions or somebody recognizes me or something. And, so I got it back in the car. I'd walk back, got back to the car, drove home. Well, I was calling, as soon as I got home, I started calling the local news because I was just outside of Baltimore. So I was calling the 3 network stations, and I was talking to their news people. And they were interested. They said, oh, yeah, give us a call back. Or we'll call you back a couple of days. We find out what's going on, and we'll get an interview and all this. I thought, okay. Well, 5 days later, nobody had called. So I called one of the stations, WMAR. I called them, talked to the news director. He heard me out. I think it was the same guy I originally talked to. He said, okay, well, I can't talk to you, and hung up on me. Well, I'm thinking, uh-oh. They're covering this up. I mean, they don't want anybody knowing about it. But anyway, for years and years, I really tried to figure out what was going on, and to the point where, yeah, I wanted to find out what was being seen. Well, I did find out later that back in the early 70s, there had been a phenomena of a hairy hominid that people had been seeing in the area that they had called the Sykesville Monster. And I had never heard about it because I had just moved down from Pennsylvania about a couple of years before that. But fortunately, I was working with a guy who had a lot of family who lived down on the river where a lot of these sightings took place, and some of his relatives were some of the original witnesses. And he got me in touch with them, and I interviewed them. Now, when that started going on back in 73, I think, the Baltimore Afro-American newspaper was actually the media that did the first reports and the interviews, because all the people who lived down on that river area were all African American. So they were talking to the witnesses and such, and they had like 8 or 9 witnesses. This thing was breaking into homes and killing chickens and all kinds of different stuff. I mean, to the point where eventually one got into somebody's garage down there, and the Sykesville police went knocking on the door to try to get this thing to get out, and it pushed the door out on top of the cop and ran off. And that cop wasn't around much longer. He was gone. But that was kind of kept quiet. I didn't find out about that until years later. So, I got interested. And that was kind of what got me interested in the cryptids. So, so I was doing a lot of investigating in that area itself. That's part of the Patapsco State Park, but that area there around Liberty Lake and the South Branch up and down the river, there had been over the years 5 Class A sightings there, reported by BFRO. And I had never reported to the BFRO until 1995 when they contacted me, when they wanted to find out from me what had happened back in 81. So I talked to them about it then. That's when it got listed on the BFRO, and then people started contacting me about it over the years. I did talk about it back in 2013 on Monsters and Mysteries in America. I did an episode about it with them. And that kind of got the word out on what had happened. So, it was, A lot of people just don't have the ability or have the opportunity to have an encounter with one cryptid, let alone two. But I've been lucky enough to have that happen to me. It's been a long time since then, but it's kind of spurred me on and got me interested, and I caught the bug, and I caught it bad, and that's what I'm keep on doing after all these years.
Have you ever had an incident where you investigated something and you had kind of like the hitchhiker effect, where it tried to come home or bother you at your residence?
I had an attachment I got on a case years and years ago, back in 1982. And I had that attachment without me knowing about it until 2021, when a friend of mine who's a psychic recognized it and literally pulled it off of me. Pulled it out of me. And I know what the entity was because I had physical contact with this entity. It was during an investigation I was doing down near an area called, well, it was on the Patapsco River, but it was south of Ellicott City. And I did a stupid thing that day. I tried to approach this thing, and it was a female, very, very bright too. It was like a bright blue and bright white, and wasn't quite dark at it. It was dusk, but I could see it. Me and another guy were together, and we saw this thing moving around in the weeds in front of us. We were just watching it, and I got curious, so I got up and I started walking towards it. And for whatever reason, this thing rushed towards me and went right through me. And I picked up an attachment I know was that female entity. And I knew who she was too, because I did the research and found out who I believe it was. But anyway, so the one residual thing from that attachment that I received was I smelled like honeysuckle. So sickening. I smelled like honeysuckle for a week. My first wife, she wouldn't even get into bed with me because she got tired of smelling that honeysuckle. And I eventually went away, but it was bad. I mean, guys at work and everything were commenting on all the time. So I didn't really tell them why it happened or how it happened, but it was weird. But I had no idea I had kept that attachment on me until years later when it was recognized and pointed out to me, and I knew invariably what it was. So the funny thing was, when the attachment was removed, I was laid up in bed for a day. I couldn't even move. It was like it took the life out of me. I never even felt it before that.
Wow. So did you see what it? I mean, you actually saw what it was, I guess, before it did that, huh?
Yeah. It was. I think the woman's name was Catherine Kennedy. She was the daughter of a plantation owner down there along the river by the name of John Kennedy, who was actually the Secretary of the Navy for Millard Fillmore. And the man was well known for having probably the best and largest library in the United States, private library. In fact, Edgar Allan Poe and Washington Irving and a lot of other people at the time used to spend time there going through his library. They just, there's a lot of talk about it. I mean, it's been written up in a few books, and I finally got a book where I got all the reference. But when I started getting the description of her, and I believe it was her, because she took over the property after her father had passed. But unfortunately, in 1869, there was a major flood on the river. It just wiped everything out. But her spirit was still roaming around.
Wow. Huh.
Yeah, those are the ones that give me the chills. I mean, Granny had told me, down at her house and Mom and them, they didn't just see things that looked like cryptids. They had what they explained is it looked like an older man had a white T-shirt on that would float through the field pretty much, things in the house would happen. They would be asleep at night, and they said it would sound like somebody would pour beans all on the floor, and they would all get up, and nothing was there.
Yeah, I've done a lot of different haunting cases over the years. I was a trained remote. I was fortunate enough to be trained in remote viewing by an individual who worked for MI6 and retired from MI6, and she literally trained me for about 6 months on how to remote view. And I've been using it in my cases ever since then. Even cryptid investigations. I have used it to help give me ideas of what to look for, and it's not really evidence based, but it's all subconscious viewing, you want to say. But it has helped me. Now, being an intuitive, being a sentient clairvoyant, I've done a lot of cases where we've removed attachments over the years. I've done a few poltergeist cases, literally worldwide, because we've done a lot of that stuff remotely over the internet, and I've written about a lot of that stuff over the years. But yeah, I mean, I'm kind of the eclectic paranormal investigator. It just doesn't really matter what it is. If it's something new and strange and unusual to me, I kind of get a little excited about it, so I want to look into it. But like I said, it keeps me out of trouble for the most part.
Jesse, did we have some questions from the subscribers they had for him? Because I don't want to keep him a long time. He was gracious enough to give us his time. We've had him over an hour.
Well, there was a few questions. AI Mod asked if something bad happened in every area where there was a Mothman type made appearance, as legend has had it, or if not. I don't know if that, I think that was kind of answered.
Yeah, I mean, the whole Harbinger theory, the Portent of Doom theory, it's kind of legendary. And that's because of the Mothman prophecies and what John Keel wrote. Of course, when the Silver Bridge collapsed in Point Pleasant, it was kind of after the fact where people say, "Oh, we saw the Mothman above the bridge at night and everything." Well, look, you got a town with 23 or 2,400 people. Right before Christmas, 46 people died that day on that collapsed bridge, and people were looking for answers. So, of course, somebody came up and said, "Well, we saw the Mothman. He was foretelling the collapse of the bridge and such." And over the years, we've had people say they've seen Mothman previous to the Fukushima thing in Japan, and the only time where this very well could have been the sign of a harbinger was the Blackbird of Chernobyl, where people had seen a large black flying being above the reactor several days before the actual meltdown. But other than that, I really haven't found any evidence to support any of that. Makes a good story. I mean, it made the Mothman prophecies more interesting, but
Right.
Amber Holman asked if the rivers do the rivers have anything to do with a lot of the sightings?
It could. That was kind of the first thing we thought of when we had these sightings in Chicago, because all the waterways going through Chicago and, of course, Lake Michigan and that. I don't know if it really has much to do with it. Some of my investigators have suggested it probably did or may have. But, when you've got 12 people on a team looking into this phenomena, you're going to get 12 different, theories as to what happened. And honestly, we really haven't had anything that's really stuck. Sure, it could be a factor, but as of now, I just don't really know if it is or not. Now, I will say the Ohio River Valley where Point Pleasant is located at, we've had Mothman sightings from Louisville the whole way to Pittsburgh along the Ohio River Valley. So is there something to do with that in the river? Sure, could be. But I don't really have anything to prove that.
That's it. The other one was about the Jeepers Creepers, which you already answered that one. So,
Right.
yeah, that's
Lon, we appreciate you coming on and finding time tonight to come on and everything. You got a lot of information. I could talk to you all night, but we really do appreciate you coming on and everything. But I want you to tell everybody how to find you and everything you're doing and everything, so they can go support you in what you're doing.
Well, the blog is phantomsandmonsters.com. I've been writing now. This is my 20th year of doing the blog. It's a daily, I put daily posts of what people send me and such of my research and other things as well. Kind of put a whole lot of things in there. But anyway, every Friday night I do a live show at 9:00 Eastern on YouTube at Phantoms and Monsters Radio. I do interviews occasionally, but most of the time I'm talking about reports people send to me, or I'm talking about cases that we're involved with. I have done several about the Mothman and other cases we've investigated over the years. Yeah, that's pretty well it. I've got a team, the Phantoms and Monsters 14 research team. We've got about 20 members that do boots on the ground investigations nationwide for the most part. We have also 35 affiliates associated with us as well. So if we get a case or an area where we need somebody to look at, I can usually get somebody to go out and look. So, yeah, so that's convenient and helps us a lot to look into a lot of the phenomena that we care about.
Travis Carpenter does have one question here that just popped up. What do you think the government agencies always seem to give you the cold shoulder and cover up on this?
Well, they're going to be what they want to be. I mean, I have been approached by the government types 3 times since I've done paranormal investigations, and all 3 times they asked me to back off on a case, and I have. They've gone to extremes, especially the last time, to ask me to back off a case. I don't know why that was. I think maybe the witness got a little too close to the truth, but that has happened. But as far as actually the government or military or whatever getting involved with the paranormal, well, they definitely know about things. I mean, they know what's going on. It's just like with UFO disclosure and alien disclosure. They're going to spoon feed the public as best they can to try to keep them from asking. I don't think we're really going to get any answers until we absolutely have to get one. I mean, if a craft lands on the White House lawn one day, then I guess they're going to have to open their mouth and say something.
Right.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I doubt very much a whole lot's going to come out. I kind of laugh every time Congress convenes and starts talking about this, because they make a big deal about it, but they're really not telling us anything. People that have been involved with investigating a lot of this stuff know exactly what they're talking about and what they're doing. So,
Oh yeah.
It's nothing new being told. And it won't until they have to.
Yeah, they're very good at deflecting.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. I did drop your links in the chat for everybody, so hopefully they went over and subscribed to you, and we'll check out your website, your blog.
Yeah, definitely support Lon. Lon, you had a lot of good information, a lot of information I've wondered about that I don't know, that I've ran into things, and I'm going to keep following you and try to have you back sometime. And I know you have a lot of things that you've encountered over the years and a lot of knowledge, and we really appreciate you sharing that with us and the audience and everyone you help too. We appreciate you a lot and for coming on and giving us your time for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, no problem. You need me, come on, let me know.
All right. Thank you. And we will let you run. And again, thank you very much for coming on.
Okay, you all take care.
Thanks. Have a great night.
You too.
Good night. Chris Segador, I didn't know what to call you tonight. So
Man of many names. My one friend thinks I'm in witness protection.
I actually didn't know the other night. I was talking to Jessie and she told me, she said, Chris was in chat. And I was like, I haven't seen him. I've been looking for him. And she's like, yeah, he's been in. And I was like, she goes, oh, Segador. I said, well, I didn't know that was him.
Yeah, no. Segador, surprise.
Yeah. You snuck in on me.
I was figuring that was just going to be your alias, and you'd come on as Chris, and then we,
Yeah, no. I definitely, for the new channel and everything, when I launch it eventually, I just figured, hey, let's stick with that. But of course, you guys can always call me Chris. I mean, everybody eventually. I mean, and even people who follow me through social media here, they call me Chris. So I was like, hey, I'm either or. That is my real name, though. Everybody actually doesn't think I'm in witness protection. But,
man, Lon blew me away. Honestly, Lon has.
Same. There's some things I didn't even know about.
I was like, he was answering questions I had without me even having to ask him. I mean, he was just like, and he don't just answer them. He makes sense. I mean, he puts it together. He knows. You know what I mean? It's like there's people that have information, and then there's people that know.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize he had been researching this stuff for as long as he has. I mean, I knew that he had been researching for a while, but wow, yeah, I was amazed.
Segador, are you from Massachusetts?
I was just about to respond to that. I was just like, hey, let me get to that. No, I know the accent is Jersey.
I was going to say, I hear the Jersey. I hadn't picked up on that before. Last time I watched the last couple of your shows and stuff too. I didn't pick up on that.
I kept it because my one friend, they were someone from the show I met like years ago. They've been following me for years. They even said to me, they were like, "Are you like from like upstate, like the East Coast?" And I was like, "Nah, I'm from just Jersey." They're like, "You sound so much like you're from like further up in Mass." And I was like, "Yeah, I have family from Massachusetts, but like I tell everybody, it's like, hey, I got a very special Tom." But it is what it is. I gotta be honest though, with Lon. He answered so many questions. I had a few more questions than I normally would have, but he answered everything. And the one thing we said about the Ultraterrestrials, that was just one thing that stood out to me because I was looking at his blog. I remember looking at that blog, and I was even thinking about like, hey, at the end of the day, like it's something in this atmosphere that triggers it, whatever it be. And then if anything, it has some form of energy. And I was thinking of O'Hare because there's so much electronic happening in that area, and there's just so much things that are happening within with its grid. So I was just thinking, okay, maybe that's something right there. But hey, at the end of the day, it's all mystery. Even like he said too, and his term for it, the unseen ones too, and even just talking about stuff in the 80s, I was totally blown away with. I didn't even know he did this blog for 20 years. I just remember him from like 2015, 2016. I was like, man.
Whenever he said he was doing it for 50 years, I was like, wow.
He's a very interesting person, and I'd love to see him come back here. I think you guys, as always, are great. And personally, I thought this was a very, very good addition. And he's and like many other additions, everybody's got a story. It's just a matter of bringing it down and figuring out what it's about.
That's it. And that's what we focus on here. Also, is we try to have a safe place for everybody to tell their experience and not be judged. Like coming up the 25th. I believe the 25th, we have Travis is going to be on, and we're going to talk. And if you would like, Chris, you're welcome to sit in on that show if you would like to. It's going to be a good one. We're going to talk about the DNA sabotage, if you will, and we're going to get to dig into some of that.
I'll try to keep my Massachusetts accent out. No, I would love to. Absolutely. Yeah, guys. And that was one thing too. I just wanted to do as well is because for me and Mike been talking, and I said, hey, anything you guys need, because personally, you guys have given me a warm welcome, and that's more than I can ask for. So yeah, for Abnormal and us as a whole, whatever you guys need, we'd love to do it, and any support, and of course anybody in the Abnormal family, that's what it's all about, and a unity of amazing content creators who are trying to work together, as well as also too bring the truth out, try to bring a moral compass to a very conflicting set of fields.
Yes.
It's very hard. It is very hard. I've heard people say that the paranormal world and the cryptic world, they just don't get along. And honestly, I'm not finding that to be true. I have met and been very, very invited to some paranormal people that I've spoke to. And, I was told, well, if you bring up, that the cryptids have a paranormal, and they're connected and they're going to get mad. No, that's not true, because a lot of those people, they do believe that. I'm finding the exact opposite of what I've been told.
I always tell people, like, I started getting into deep research in 2015, like 10 years ago, before my hiatus. And even then, I remember just like my opinion always changing, looking at different notes. And then I look back now and I still look at certain things that I did years ago. And I'm thinking, yeah, my perceptions totally went off the grid with it. Even now with how I feel about like cryptids, and even like for the longest time with the whole full F&B, flesh and blood aspect, and then just looking into the other sides of it with the paranormal and stuff, I was like, oh, okay. So... But that's part of, I guess, developing and maturing and respecting, where these things come from. As long as there's validation or validity to it, But I mean, again, that's all part of the research. That's all part of what we do. So
right. I mean, I tell you what woke me up a lot is I was talking to a guy, and I don't have permission to use his name. I will if he'll let me later. But I was like, what do you think about the spiritual aspect to Bigfoot? Because a lot of people, are flesh and blood. And exactly what he told me was, he said it would be in the days of Noah. What did they see? It was all spiritually connected. And I was like, wow, that really opened my eyes when he said that. I was like, I can't argue that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's always something else to learn in this field too. I mean, I have to say, even the time that I've spent even researching, I've been studying paranormal aspect of things since I was like 13, 12 or 13, and didn't believe in Bigfoot or cryptids and that general aspect of things. But
God, you've been doing it a long time.
Long in the saddle for a long time.
Yeah.
So what have you been up to, man? Are you going to launch something new coming up, or what do you got going on?
Oh, which one?
Anything. We're digging, man.
Oh, you
we're
mean
always.
me? You're asking me.
I'm asking you.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, no. So, so right now I'm just doing. I'm working with an author. We're doing something separate outside of cryptids and paranormal and all the goody goods. But that's my production company, Broken Arrow. I know you mentioned Broken Arrow a couple nights ago. So Broken Arrow is my production company, but the show I'm doing, which is the name Segador, and that is going to be a mixture of different things: cryptids, paranormal, true crime. It's kind of what I was doing previous, except that I'm just going fresher and I'm just taking more time to do more research. I've been doing a lot of PR. I've been working on a lot of things behind the scenes before, because come June, it like in literally another week or so, right? Yeah, literally. So next Sunday, like the following Sunday is the first.
Knocking on the door, huh?
Advertising, just everything, every single day, and just throwing things out and doing this. But I mean, at the end of the day, the whole goal, just so people say, hey, this is another brand out there that's just doing something. And hey, if you're interested, if you like it, fantastic. Now, a lot of what I've been doing has been mostly generated based, also based on just working on getting promos cut together, working on things. I have extra different ways of creativity. I still write the scripts. I just have other voices doing it. But the main whole focus of it is that we just want to bring a lot. I'm going to acknowledge something that's never really talked about, especially for a lot of horror narration, is the basis validity of it being fictitious or nonfiction. Now, me being an honest citizen is going to sit there and say, this is going to be one episode that's going to be completely fictional, made for horror narration purposes. It's for entertainment, completely ABCD, so that everybody doesn't think, oh my goodness. Then there's going to be somewhere it's going to be mostly either true crime or real encounters that I rear and share that will be nonfiction. So it's going to be a mixture of both. And some people gotten confused on that. And I tell people, don't worry, don't be confused, because when you see it and it needs to make sense, yeah, it's going to be a lot of back and forth, but what you guys are doing is exactly what I was doing years ago when I was really more active in the field. And it's important to have fresher faces. I just want to take more of a backseat this time and just tell more of a story base, but also to still bring people on, but as time perceives. And, not to mislead, because everybody says narration is narration, it could be real or fake, but at the same time too, I mean, I can say the same thing about anything that we see on our media nowadays. I mean, God, yeah. we use ChatGPT to make stories up now. It's incredible. So, right. But yeah, no, it's a lot coming pretty soon. And as time goes on, and that's why, like, I even told everybody else to say, listen, I'm going to start from the bottom up. I'm already working with my one associate, my other business partners. And then now we're going to start working on doing my other content, because by next year, my goal is by the time I get my feature length out, my other movie, and the other movie I'm about to start working on in June as well. I just want to at least have some sort of clarity and say, hey, because I went to school for all this crazy stuff, but now it's like, all right, it's time to get back in the saddle. And also, too, bringing God into my life, because I didn't have him in my life for a long time until about 1.5 years ago. So it's all clicks in. So that's the long rundown to what's happening in the snowboard as we have weird weather over here. We have fall all of a sudden coming in from spring, and then now it's going to go back to spring again, and then Memorial Day we're going back into like 61. So I'm thinking it's going to be a fall Memorial Day for me.
It is crazy times, but I tell you what, you're going to succeed, because if God's for you, who can be against you, right?
And you too, brother. You too. You guys both. I mean, listen, I know you guys, Abnormal, we have Arcane, and everybody here's family to me. And it's important that you have a structure. And I'm not going to go into it any further like that with, you know what I mean? If you know what I mean, UFOs, right. Men in Black are great things too. But I tell you what, everybody knows that when you're doing the right thing, no matter how it be, it means you're in the right position. At the end of the day, there's a lot of people, Scott Carpenter. There's another person, Brenton Samwin, Linda Godfrey, all these people that have been long moved on in this world and have left, Ed Lorraine Warren, all these people. There's a reason. And there's also a reason why God brought you guys to this as well. There's a reason after your experiences, and then also too, to know that you need to have some sort of positivity. And trust me, I think you guys, aside from this, like, you do the YouTube show, you do that. You guys make articles, make blogs, do like all these crazy things. Like, there's so much opportunity out there. And trust me, anything you guys need, just holler. I'll be glad to help you guys with it. Trust me. I'm not one to be selfish. I used to be years ago. And I realized as I grew up that life is more than that. I want to be a leader, not a dictator.
I've been telling everybody here lately, it doesn't take nothing from one candle to light another candle. It doesn't take any flame from that candle.
A little bit of faith. That's all it takes. Just a little bit.
Just a little. I had a person talking to me the other day, and I'm not going to say their name, but they have a channel, and they said, it's hard because every time I do something, I get attacked and they try to discredit me. And I said, you just have to keep pushing, because that's just what they do. When the closer you get to the truth, the harder the enemy tries to hide it. And you just have to push through it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. There's always going to be a trial and tribulation. There's always going to be the devil playing with you. It's just a matter of you having the courage and the armor that you shield yourself with, and to prepare yourself for whatever happens. That's how I learned, even with years ago when I was going through stuff in this field. You build. And I think you guys are in the right direction with that. Haters are going to hate, but hey, God's by your side. All it takes.
That's it. With that being said, man, I'm going to let you run. I know you've been sick and you've been trying to rehydrate and you've been fighting a bug.
Yeah, no, absolutely, guys. And listen, we'll chit chat a little bit more on Messenger, but I want to thank you guys again. I want to thank everybody of the Abnormal family. I know some people have left some comments. I want to thank everybody there. Thank you all. And God bless. Happy Thursday night, and to another episode of Abnormal. You all have a lovely night now.
Good
You
night.
too, man. We'll see you on the next one.
Yeah.
Oh, you know it.
Good night. Great show. It was a great show. Two great people on the show in one night. We're going to have another great person coming up, Travis Carpenter. Travis, I've already got a page typed out. I'm working on it, and I'm going to try to keep my OCD in check. I'm going to try to stay on course because Travis kind of makes it unfair. He puts out a lot of information. It makes my mind go, but I want to know about this too, but I want to know about that. But, and I can't, it just means there's going to be a lot more shows with Travis. That's what it means.
I don't think we've ever actually had a show with Travis where you've stayed on topic. I think both of you kind of.
There is so much information. I feel like a kid in a candy shop. It's like, what do I want first? But we're just gonna have to have a lot more shows.
Yeah. I like it though. It always keeps things interesting.
It does for sure. Well, Jess, let's end this one. And for everybody that's on, I guess I should say, we will be Boots on the Ground tomorrow night after Friday night, guys. They're going to have regular video drops Saturday and Sunday. I will not be live Saturday and Sunday. I have things that I have to do, and I'm taking the weekend off. I don't know if Jess is, but I'm vacating the premises Friday night after the Boots on the Ground.
Yeah, you're taking the weekend off. He told me I could take the weekend off too, but Saturday I will be going Boots on the Ground. So hopefully you guys can all check out the show and follow me Saturday night, 9 o'clock. But as that is said, I would like to thank everybody for being here tonight. We appreciate each and every one of you. God bless, stay safe, and we will see you all next time, tomorrow. Yeah.
All right, guys, I want to thank everybody for showing up. Mostly, I want to thank Lon for showing up, giving us his time tonight, and sharing his knowledge with us. Go check him out, support him, guys. He seems like a really good guy. He's got a lot of good information. I want to thank Segador, a.k.a. Chris, for coming on the show and co-hosting. We appreciate him coming on every time. Go support him. He's a really good guy. Travis has been putting out a lot of stuff. Go check out what he's putting out. Go support him. And everybody that works with us that you see here, guys, go support them. They're good people. The community's growing. We're all working together. We're coming to the truth. And you know what? We're more than just working on the truth. It's more than just a job. We're friends. We're a family, and we're able to share ideas, and we're adults, and we don't have to attack each other and try to say that each other's wrong. We listen to each other with an open mind and give each other respect as true adults do that have integrity. And that's what means the most, is to have integrity and to care about another person's feelings. That matters a lot to me. But, guys, I want to get ready for Boots on the Ground tomorrow night. I got a lot of stuff to charge up and make sure I got enough duct tape. And as always,
one quick thing before you do that last thing, I forgot, because we didn't do prayers, so I forgot to do the prayers at the end. So I want to say prayers for Connie, prayers for Barton and Letitia Nunley. Please keep Lisa Ann's mother and her sister Carolyn in your prayers. Cubot, Randy and his family, Lindsay and Tony Merkel, Emmy's sister-in-law Tanaka, the Wolf Lady, Luana and her family and her grandson, and Colton, please.
And I'm glad you said that, because you reminded me of something also. I would like to also say Barton and Letitia, the prayers for you guys, and looking forward to the day that you all make your comeback. We're rooting for you, hoping that you make a comeback. I want you to know that we stand with you. We support you. Ready to see some of those creek walks. I watched some of your older videos, and I could learn a lot from you just doing that. I got a lot of creeks around here. Got a lot of arrowheads I've found in them. And just want y'all to know that you still have some friends here rooting for you. All right, guys, until next time, keep your head on a swivel. Don't be something's dinner. We'll see you on the next one. Good night, and God bless.